Well, we are back for another year of the Building Our World podcast. I hope everyone had a wonderful break and has started the new year well. What a way for the podcast to start off this year with this week's guest. None other than Jessy Halison, the engineering manager at Berlin-based Ecosia. Not only has she risen the ranks in tech to become an engineering manager at one of Berlin's hottest tech companies, she is also passionate and an expert in the field of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. And this is what today's episode centres around. In this episode, she shares her knowledge on defining the problem that we have in today's workplace, how businesses can foster a culture of diversity and inclusion, and why DE&I is good for business. And she also shares her own story from being a Black woman in tech. For anyone like myself looking to really understand the problem and also to try and be part of the solution, then this episode is well worth a listen. Enjoy. So Jessy Halison, engineering manager at Ecosia. Good morning, welcome. The first episode of 2021. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. So I was talking before about why I really wanted to get you on the show. So rightly or wrongly, diversity, equity and inclusion is now sort of a hot topic, but it should have been a hot topic for many years gone by. Because of the events of last year, I think many companies are now educating themselves and many people are educating themselves on this topic as well. I know some companies have tackled this and have had good intentions, but gone about it in the wrong way. So I think it's really valuable for a lot of people, including myself as a recruiter, to know the problems, the solutions, and how deep-rooted things sort of actually are. And I know you don't call yourself the expert, but I think you're probably very knowledgeable on the subject. So I wanted to first ask you, how would you define diversity, equity and inclusion, DEI?
So if we just go to the root of each word, diversity, the idea is to have a diverse set of people, ideas coming together. So obviously you can reach that out by having diverse people together. So not just it's the idea of diversity of thoughts, obviously, but diversity of thoughts comes also from diversity of background and experiences, and and obviously when you are not the same race, same religion, same gender, etc., that has an impact on how you see life and the experience that shaped you, basically. So that's the idea of bringing more diversity together. Equity is the idea of giving the same. It's not being. I don't believe in being equal, like assessing everyone by the same way. Because I don't know if you saw this, this image of a panel of jurists in front of a lot of animals, like an elephant, a fish, a monkey, and they are assessed to climb a tree. And obviously you can't do that because you are all different. So equity is ensuring that people can reach a goal based on their own ability. At least that's how I see myself, equity is. And inclusion is the fact that we can all be together and we are able to find common grounds to work together and not being discriminated, obviously, due to our diverse background. And belonging. Belonging is also usually used instead of inclusion now, because it's this idea of, there is this say in DE&I that DE&I is like having a party, and diversity is being invited, and inclusion is also being asked to dance. But belonging is this idea of you are also invited to help shape the party. So you are not just considered as a guest, but you're part of the whole organization. So that's the main idea behind, I think, diversity, inclusion, equity and inclusion is this idea of everyone, where the society is super diverse. There is not just one type of person, and being able to come together and to work and to reach a goal with everyone feeling like they belong here together.
Yes, I think that would probably be for any sort of people maybe pushing against DEI initiatives. I think if you don't know too much about the subject, a lot of people would probably say, well, let's just focus on the numbers and let's just focus on the metrics and celebrate, people being here of different backgrounds. But that's just one part of it. And it's almost probably the easier part of it as well, but it's about creating a culture where it's inclusive and those people who are underrepresented can shape party as well. And I think maybe in the past, time's gone by, and from my own experience sort of working with tech companies on this, there's just a massive focus on the numbers and the metrics and the percentages. And then when you get them in the business, the work sort of doesn't stop there really.
Yeah, that's very true. There is a lot of emphasis on diversity, bringing more diverse candidates, more women, more people of color, more disabled people, or you name it. The what is not the norm today, or the overrepresentation in tech, which is mainly majoritarily white men. And they just focus on bringing them inside the company, but there is little effort to want them to stick and to stay and to be heard as well, because this is also part of it. If you're part of a company but whatever you say is not heard, you don't want to stay on the long run on the company, because you feel like your voice is not valued. And even if you like the company and you want to bring the best out of the company, it just means that they are not willing to give you space. So, yeah, I think there is a lot of work which still need to be done on making sure that people who are brought into companies want to stay in the companies. And retaining candidates is a very, very important part of it. And inclusion helps that, definitely.
Well, in tech companies where there's such fast growth, and it happens a lot in Berlin, almost that is completely forgotten about. And then you get all these people in, and then a year later they're looking for a new job and they leave, and then you've got to replace them. And it's like a vicious cycle. But I know where you work at Ecosia, they are really, really good at executing this and doing this. So what have you done there that seems to have worked? And I know it's always an evolving thing, but what sort of initiatives have you felt that have really taken off?
So first and foremost, we take very seriously, DE&I very seriously at Ecosia. For me, that was really refreshing coming to this company and seeing so much effort doing on that side. When I arrived, there were already a lot of things that was happening. Most of them were started by Ecosians themselves, so it was not something coming from the leadership, but really a push from the Ecosians. And I think for me that's really a key, because it needs to come from both sides, because if it's just a push from the leadership but people are not convinced, obviously you won't achieve a lot of things. And on the other side, if it's only the Ecosians or the employees who are pushing without getting the support of the management, you can go as far as you can go without support money or any time allocated for that. And at Ecosia, we are really in this perfect situation where the push come from both sides. When I arrived, it really came from both sides. And obviously, as you noted, the events on last summer kind of also pushed us to really make that effort even more, even though it was already very good. And we started to want to put a better structure around that. So, for example, we have a sponsorship group at the leadership level, meaning that I'm part of it and the leadership. And the idea is for us to support the Ecosians on finding proper budgets, trainings if they need, pushing also to spread some of the initiative around the company. Because again, if it comes just from a group of people, but it's not spread, that does not really help. Because some of the changes which are also asked by the DE&I working group, which is our Ecosians working on that, obviously can be change of structure or change of policies, etc. So if there is, again, no reflection on the leadership side, it can just go as far as it can go. And so we have this sponsorship group whose goal is really to spread the work done by the spread and support the work done by the DE&I working group. And the DE&I working group is a group of Ecosians, volunteers, and it's rotating. So I don't remember I think it's every quarter we renew the people in it, because we really consider that usually people think that D&I is a people team or HR topic. It's not. It's everyone's business, because someone who comes from outside needs to be included and feeling belonging in their team, and the people team can't do anything. It needs to come from everyone. So having employees directly working on that, being educated around that, is really helping on that part. And they are the best one to know what are the needs inside the company as well. So I think that's what makes it work so well right now at Ecosia.
So it's a lot of listening from the leadership team with those different working groups. Obviously, I've interviewed a lot of founders and C-level people for this podcast, and sadly, they were all kind of white male, a couple of females, and finding people in sort of those minority groups and senior level positions I found incredibly difficult, especially in Berlin. So I think for a lot of people, and speaking to people in those positions, one concern they have is, as a person in a privileged position or a privileged ethnicity, they want to tackle this problem and they understand the problem, but they don't want to seem like they're just doing it because it's like trendy, or they're terrified to really tackle it and then make a mistake and it to backfire. Have you ever come across that in your time as an issue?
I mean, it also happens to me. Yeah. I'm a Black woman in tech, but I'm able-bodied. I'm a cisgender. I pass for a heteronormative person, so I don't face. Also, I'm privileged as well in certain regards. So yes, it's normal. It's normal in growth to be afraid. It's the discomfort of learning, and that's normal. And you will make mistake. The only thing is, making mistake is a problem. Yes, but it's not a draining problem. What is really important is when you do a mistake and people are informing you about the mistake, is not to get defensive and recognize the mistake, apologize, and make. I don't know if making amen is a proper word, but it's like finding action to correct what has been wrong done, and make sure that you put in place things so you don't repeat the mistake and you learn from it. And I think that's maybe one of the things people are not really realizing is people will be. I know that there is a lot of talk around cancel culture, blah blah, but the truth is, I saw companies doing real proper apologies, and people are really willing to follow them if they are doing it right. But if you don't do it right, yes, it will backfire. So learn how to properly apologize and how to grow from it. And obviously, you can't do it on your own. So pay people who have the knowledge to educate you. Or if you have people in your team who has the knowledge, ask them and listen to them. That's really the key. It's, as you were saying earlier, it's listening is one of the most important and undervalued skill, especially in this type of work. Because when you're not facing this type of issues, obviously it's very difficult for you to understand. So listen and believe people who has that experience, because there are a lot of things that you don't realize. For example, we talk about microaggressions. Sometimes you will be like, yeah, but it's just a little comment. But we have passed years and years to listen to this micro comment and know the behavior that are hidden behind. So we have the experience to know that it might be just an expression, but it hide a lot more deeper problems.
But yeah, that's so fascinating. My girlfriend's in recruitment as well, and she says, when she was younger or sort of a graduate, she kind of just accepted that that's the way it is. She didn't she was a victim of sexism, not blatant sexism, but even herself, she didn't realize it. But people speak to her in ways that they would never ever speak to me like that. So it's like, it's so real, and when it's just so normal for you that even people who are suffering those microaggressions can't even recognize it, it's definitely a massive issue. Coming back to Berlin Tech, I'd be quite interested to hear your thoughts on this. So, because that's pretty much all I recruit into, and that's most people who would listen to this. So, Berlin from the outside looking in, I'm from London, originally grew up here. So, Berlin from the outside looking in seems like a really progressive place. It seems like a place where the majority of people's voices are heard, and it seems like quite an equitable place to be. In your experiences, what are your views on Berlin Tech when it comes to DE&I? How far along is it, and how much work is it to be done?
So there is a really strong community in DE&I in Berlin. It's really nice. I find it really inspiring to have so many people committed to it. That being said, there is still a lot of work to do, mainly because what I was, at least at my level, able to experience is DE&I at the moment is really focusing on gender diversity. Yeah. But the truth is, if you don't tackle intersectionality, the fact that you can be across several different identities, you won't be able to really tackle the issue on the long run. And I think that's one of the, and I see it more particularly because I'm a Black woman and in tech. So I'm literally on one of the crossroads of this intersectionality. So some of their initiative will be supposedly benefiting me, but since there's still racism that can come into play which is not tackled, I still might be able to face discrimination. That's definitely, again, at Ecosia, I never ever experienced that. And I mean, they hired me as an engineering manager. I'm not sure that would have been able to have this type of position in any type of companies, obviously. But yeah, there is still a lot of work to do to realize that diversity is not just a gender thing. And yes, world is divided between women and men, but everyone is more than just their gender, and we need to take that into account as well. So yeah. And I think there is still a lot of discussion around what is diversity, in fact, because, again, when you just think about gender, it's a thing. Personally, at my personal level, I think diversity should be assessed at the company level and maybe at department level, because in HR, for example, there is unfortunately a lot of women, and it also, again, just seen on my experience, a lot of men takes the leadership position in HR, but it's mainly women. So what diversity is in this type of department, for example, or in engineering, or in marketing, or in sales? And after, it's the diversity is just the factor of what difference of thoughts and experience can you bring into it? What I was saying in one of our group is, well, if your group is, for example, a group of just Black women, let's say there is a company with just Black women, diversity would be not being a Black woman and anything else, or not being able-bodied Black woman, for example. So bringing someone who has experience with being disabled and what it means and how it shapes their interaction with the product we're building and with the world is already a diverse factor that is interesting for people to embed. And I think this is what is maybe missing sometimes, in having this realizing that it's not a one size fit all. It's really depend on the need that you and the problem that you want to tackle. And if you consider that your product should serve the world, I personally think that then your company should reflect the world as it is. Yeah. Otherwise, how can you be sure that you're serving the world?
I think first and foremost that if you have a really solid, diverse company at all levels, it will benefit the company and it will make business better. It will sell the product or service more, and make the company more money. Which is business is always business at the end of the day. And I think definitely recently, and there's been a lot of literature around it, that's definitely widely accepted now. And I think probably in years gone by, it was probably more seen as like just metrics and quota. And I remember even at school. So I grew up in a really kind of white middle class area, and there were very, very few people of minorities. But you look in the school brochure, and I remember people would say at the time, like every time there's a photo shoot or something, then it's always the same sort of people of color that would get called out because they want to seem like, it's sort of some melting pot. But I think definitely it's definitely evolved since then. But coming from yourself, coming into tech, I know you started out as like a QA engineer. Did you ever realize, was it a conscious thing where you would kind of look above you and positions above you and think, no one really looks like me or has come where I've come from? Was that ever something that you thought about consciously?
That's a tough question. I don't think I ever thought about that consciously, at least not at the beginning of my career. I started my career in the United States and in France, and it never was something that's really shocked me, because also in my first company, one of the manager was a Black woman. So I was seeing myself represented, obviously, not higher than the middle management, but it was already more than what I was thinking could happen. But that's true that it's when I moved to Berlin in a new company that I realized that it was not a given. I was at that time the only Black and only woman in the engineering department. And that's when I realized, what I lived in my previous company was kind of an isolated experience, and it might not be true everywhere else. And that's also when I started to be more conscious about that, because it also meant that when you can't see yourself in a higher position, you have difficulty to think and know that you can grow in this position, or that you will get the opportunities to grow in this position. So then you start, and obviously I was a bit further in my career, so I was obviously thinking about evolving as well. And that's when it started to become a conscious observation. Yes.
Did that in itself then frame how business was done, how you felt microaggressions? Could you see a big difference then to the company you're at now?
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I as I was saying at the beginning, starting my career at Ecosia was really so refreshing, because I really felt the difference with my previous experiences. Not all my experiences were like that, but I remember my first meeting, and I sat, and we were a lot. Like, the company was big at that time, and I was looking around me, and no one at all looked like me. They all looked the same, but none of them were looking like me. And that, I remember that the first time when I was feeling quite uncomfortable, because obviously when you're the only different, you ask yourself, will my voice be heard? Because you're one versus a lot, not versus in the sense of combat or fighting spirit or anything, but it's just that your perspective is not the one that will be the most represented. So how will your perspective be heard and understood and validated? And it happened that it was not heard, validated, etc. I was very lucky because I had an amazing manager, and my direct team was really great. But in a larger sense, larger perspective, in the management, in the culture in general of the company, you could see that they were not really ready to see other type of perspective. And yes, it had an impact on the way we were building product, and it had an impact on our customer. Our customer base was, if I remember correctly, the number, like paying customer, 98% of them looked exactly like the tech team and the rest of the company. Because obviously you build things, you don't think that there are differences because you don't see other perspectives. So you just build things that will appeal to people looking like you.
That's so interesting. So interesting how it has a direct effect on the product as well. Because if you have, I kind of see it in almost in like, so obviously I was in the recruitment agency world, sort of the London area, and and I remember you did a post about this where obviously you get a lot of approaches from recruitment agencies. And it really made me think, actually, when you kind of asked, no one ever brings up when they pitch to you maybe the diversity of their candidate pool, how they track their diversity, how their pipeline evolves, what initiatives they have. And that was really interesting because I can only speak for UK recruitment agencies, but pretty much it's so white male dominated, especially at the kind of director levels. And you think if those directors meetings had a representative group of people, then maybe more people would approach you with that in mind. Because when I first started in recruitment, it wasn't even on the radar, wasn't even a thing. Just for me, it was just about getting the best software engineer into a position. And I remember when you wrote that on LinkedIn, it really made me think, and that's why it's kind of led me to go on this journey to try and speak to people and sort of educate myself, because it is a complex one to grapple. What about the future? How things are always progressing, things are always evolving. What needs to change, and how can companies, people, employees really evolve things in the workplace to make this a success?
For me, again, the key is really listening and making a culture where speaking up and having and also having disagreement, but having healthy discussion is valued. I think that nothing will come if there is no communication. That's simple. I remember when I started my journey into discovering everything around DE&I, which in fact was started by joining this company where I felt alone. I was like, okay, how can I help the company evolve as well on this culture? So I started my journey myself at that time. I remember reading this article. It was about, I think it was a COO or a team lead or at eBay, and one of the first thing he did was to bring everyone in the room and just ask them to talk and share a time where they felt like the outcast, because we all of us have an experience of that. And the idea was to just create this connection and this empathy for everyone. Like people who does not feel that every day, just remember how it feels, how they felt when it happened to them 1 or 2 or 3 times maybe, and being able to relate with people who face that every single day. And I found that approach so great because this was this idea of we're refocusing to the human being behind the company. It's not just building product, but it's people together, and they need to talk, and they need to they just need to relate with each other. And when you start to have this connection, it's easier then to talk about more difficult topic. And it's also easier for people to create this empathy of, okay, I remember how it felt being outcast and not being heard. So maybe I don't want to make that type of environment for someone else. And I think if we just go back to that, we just go back in, we are all human connecting, and we remind ourselves that all humans are complex beings and not just one face, but a kaleidoscope of things. That will already be good. Just, communicate, listen to people when you don't know, because you don't know what you don't know. Just listen when people tell you. And if we go through that, I think it will be already very good.
Absolutely. Well, I think tech is a place where it definitely needs to happen. And with the rise of tech in general in the tech industry, even like Berlin, it's still really young. It's a really young ecosystem. But from my sort of research and speaking to people so far, if people don't take these initiatives or haven't taken them already or don't take them really soon, they'll probably get left behind in terms of just employer branding and like recruiting and retention. But at the end of the day, their product that they're making as well. It's interesting that maybe this is more for business to consumer brands, but it's people now want the brands they buy, they want those brands to have the same values as them now. Maybe that wasn't such the case in the past. And I know last year when after George Floyd, when that came really to the fore, companies for the first time really had to take that stance and have as a brand their own values and almost not political, just their own stance on social justice issues, which I think for the first time that really happened. So in terms of this conversation, I mean, I've learned so much, and I know a lot of people out there listening will have learned a lot as well. And I genuinely believe the more I learn about this, the more I speak to people, that if companies, I've got my own business now and it's something I'm really kind of looking into, if companies don't take this seriously and don't adopt these measures and listen, if they don't listen, then I think they're going to get left behind.
There is especially two things to take into account. In tech, we are looking for people. We are understaffed. A lot of companies are looking for people. And now, more and more, we have bootcamps that deliver really high-quality developers, but they are coming from all diverse of background. And if the company are not willing to do the changes, they won't be able to keep these talents, and they will die, because we need more of these talents today. So they will need to do the transition at some point. To talk about the George Floyd event, I also think that one of the mistakes company did, and it was kind of a joke also in the DE&I community, was like, making a statement is not enough, because if employees inside your company are afterwards saying, yeah, you're writing that, but I can vouch that it's not the way you're living it inside, it will make more damages than just making a statement where, again, that we know we are not perfect, we will try to work on that, on being better. But just saying a stance that you don't even live inside does not make anything. It just make more damages at the end. So I would always advise company, when this type of events happen and they want to show that they care, care first internally, because if you don't care internally and don't care about making people working with you and helping gaining money for you feeling like they're really heard, understood and trusted and believed, everything that you will put out there will find a way to be debunked very quickly. So work internally, and after do your statement and act externally, but first and foremost take care of people who are already inside your company.
Yeah, live the values. That's so important. Yeah, I know a few companies that came back to bite them when they you can't solve those problems with one post on social media.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think people as well, they're a lot more understanding if you just say, like, we're not perfect at this, even in life or whatever area of life. If people buy into you a lot more and trust you more if you don't pretend that you're just perfect. So I think in general life, I think that's really useful. Yeah, from my side, I just wanted to thank you so much, and it's great to actually speak to you and hear what's going on in your life and what you're doing at Ecosia right now. Because from the outside looking in, it really looks like you're all getting it really spot on. So I'm excited to see the journey you go on, and obviously the company as well.
Thanks. Yeah, that's an exciting journey.
Thank you so much for listening to the Building Our World podcast. To show your support and to stay up to date, then be sure to hit that subscribe button. Until then, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.